What you just saw was a short gameplay snippet from the game Sound Voltex, or SDVX, a Japanese arcade rhythm game developed by Konami. Yes, the title is actually Sound Voltex, not Vortex. I have no idea what a Voltex is. Anyway, the game is really fun to play, but while being popular in Japan, it is not that widely known among Western audiences. I also felt that the resources aimed at beginners were a bit scarce, so I've been working on compiling this one-stop guide for it. To explain quickly how the game works, it is a vertical scrolling rhythm game, similar to the more well-known Guitar Hero. There are 4 lanes on which right notes are moving towards the bottom, and 4 right buttons that you need to press at the right time to hit those notes. Additionally, there are 2 orange buttons, called the FX buttons, which you can use to hit the orange notes, and they span 2 lines. For both of these types of notes, there are also long notes, and for those you need to keep the respective button pressed for the duration of the note. However, the main draw of Sound Voltex, and what makes it unique, is the lasers. The lasers are the blue and pink lines that you see across the lanes during gameplay. On the controller, you have 2 knobs that you need to turn in rhythm with the movement of the lasers on the screen. The left knob controls the blue laser, and the right knob controls the pink laser. So, for example, if the blue laser is crossing over from left to right, you need to turn the left knob clockwise. The lasers are really what sets Sound Voltex apart from other games and makes it so fun to play and to watch. Another cool feature is that hitting the lasers and the FX buttons will also create sounds or change the music of the song by applying effects to it. So it feels a bit like you're a DJ remixing the song. But before we dive deeper into gameplay specifics, let's discuss how you can even play the game. There are 2 main ways to play Sound Voltex, in the arcade or via the home version. The arcade version is the original version of Sound Voltex and probably the best experience you can have playing it. Especially the latest version of the cabinet, called Valkyrie, which comes with a large 120Hz monitor, which helps with reading the charts. If you have an e-amusement card from Japan, you can also use that to log in and save your scores as well as progress in unlocking songs. The main problem with arcade play is, depending on where you are located geographically, finding a SDVX cabinet near you might be nigh impossible. For searching for locations, I recommend the website Xenius I Vanisher. I hope I pronounced it correctly. And you can filter there by Sound Voltex and get a map view of most locations where there are machines. If there's a location near you, I recommend you to give it a try there to see if you like the game before you potentially spend the big bucks on a home setup. On a single arcade credit, you can usually play 3 songs, and that should cost you at most a few US in the equivalent of your local currency. Just be careful that if you fail a track in the arcade on the first or second song, your set can end early. So especially as a beginner, I would recommend to start with low difficulty songs. More on that later. Now, let's discuss playing at home. For this, Konami offers an official home version of the game, called Exceed Gear Konasute, which is short for Konami Game Station. The game is offered as a subscription service for 1600 yen per month, which is about 12 US at the time of recording this video. If you play the game somewhat frequently, that is a steal really compared to playing at the arcade. Additionally, you will need a controller to play the game. There are several third-party controllers available that mimic the official arcade controller, with the popular choices being the Yuancon STVX12 and the Gamo Force 2. They will set you back a few hundred US dollars typically, including shipping and taxes. So, let's look into installing the game and buying the subscription. The websites for it are only available in Japanese, but Chrome can translate the page for you. There are already several great resources on this, which I will link in the video description. One is a text-based tutorial by voltexes.org, and the other is a video tutorial by YouTuber JQ. So please check out one of these guides for the setup. Once installed, we can launch the game. When you launch the game for the first time, it needs to download updates. And that can take a really long time on the first launch, up to several hours, since the download is quite slow. After you survive that, you can go to the settings menu. The important settings here are on which monitor to play the game, which is this box here, as well as the display orientation. You should select the orientation where you can see the picture upright. It is highly recommended to play the game on a vertical monitor, so ideally you get one of those mounts that allow you to rotate the monitor. You can also choose here if you want to lock the game at 60 FPS or you want to have unlocked frame rate, in which case it might run with up to 120 FPS. After setup, we can finally click on Start Game. Before doing that, make sure to connect your controller already, because the game might not recognize it if you plug it in later. So, now we are in the game, and after pressing Start for a few times, let's enter the default game mode. This is the main menu, but before we start playing, let's check out the crew menu briefly. This is where you can select the character that greets you at the beginning of the game and between songs. This is the default one, however. If you're not a big fan of the big enemy titties with jiggle physics, you can also choose another one. So I'm going for this one. So with that done, let's hit Game Start, and we are now at the song selection screen. Here you will see different folders of charts, for example, by alphabetical order. But in general, the most useful folders are probably those that sort the charts by level, so you can start with the easier charts and then work your way up slowly to the harder ones. There's also this special folder, Okini-iru, which contains your favorite song. In the home version, you can favorite the song in the song selection by pressing 0 on the numpad of the keyboard. The song will then get the star symbol and appear in your favorites folder. At this point, it's worth noting that each song has several charts of varying difficulty, and you can use the left knob to change the difficulty of the current song up or down. Once you select the chart, the actual gameplay starts. So, let's talk about scores. Every note that you hit will increase your score. However, you only get the full score if the timing is on point. If you are slightly too early or too late, you will get half the points for that note, and the game will display to you whether you were early or late in hitting the note. If you're far too early or far too late, you will miss the note. This will also break your current combo, which is displayed at the bottom of the screen. At the right side of the screen, you see a gauge that initially starts at 0%. This gauge reflects how well you play. If you hit notes, it will increase, and if you miss notes, it will decrease. At the end of the chart, you need to have the gauge filled to at least 70% in order to clear the song. Otherwise you will fail, which is called a track crash. Apart from the binary clear-fail result, you also get a rating based on your score. The maximum score on each chart is 10 million. You will reach that if you hit every note with great timing. The ratings have certain score thresholds. For example, you need at least 8.7 million points to get an A rating, and at least 9.9 million points to get an S rating. In general, if you don't get at least an A rating, it is very unlikely that you clear this song. You can also see here a metric called Volforce. It is basically your skill level in the game and ranges from 0 to 22. What Volforce means is, essentially, if you have e.g. 8 Volforce, you can handle everything that level 8 throws at you very well. Volforce is based on your top 50 best chart scores, where best takes into account the level of the chart, the score, as well as a few other minor details which I won't go into now. Now let's talk about some important settings that you can adapt. Between songs, you can push both FX buttons at the same time to enter the settings menu. The most important setting here is the lane speed. It changes how fast the notes will fly at you during songs. Increasing lane speed is necessary to play higher difficulty songs, as at the default speeds, it is just too many notes on the screen at once for your brain to process. Another useful setting can be offset. This changes the timing of the notes. You can adapt this, for example, if you have some delay in your monitor or sound setup. You will notice this as the results screen of a song, if you are scoring significantly more late than early or vice versa. It might be a good idea to adapt your offset. Here are some general gameplay tips for starting out. First, let's start with the default hand position. For hitting the buttons, you should generally use your thumbs to hit the FX buttons, and your other fingers to hit the right buttons. Most people use the index finger and ring finger to hit the right buttons. And when knobs appear, of course you need to move one or both of your hands to the respective knobs. And that should be sufficient for levels up to 12 approximately. From 13 onwards, you will more often need to use cross-hand techniques. For example, it could be that you need to turn the left knob with your left hand, and at the same time hit the button on the left side with your right hand. In even higher levels, mostly level 16 onwards, there will also be patterns that require you to cross-hand the knobs. So it could be that your one hand is busy holding buttons and then your other hand needs to cross over to the wrong knob to turn it. So in general, you won't have a static hand positions in higher level chart. One good strategy for practicing cross-handing buttons is to play low-level songs, maybe up to level 7 or so, with one hand only, to learn to hit all of the buttons with just one hand. Another general thing to note is that there is no release timing of notes. That means when there is a hold note, you don't need to let it go at the time when the note ends. This means that you can keep holding notes, or you can hold a note that is actually not a hold note without penalty. In some cases, it can be easier to play some patterns that way, because you can make them symmetric. Now let's take a look at some laser mechanics. The most important thing to understand about the lasers and the knobs is that they are actually a digital input. It does not matter at all how slow or fast you turn the knobs, as long as you're turning them into the right direction. Another important concept is that while the laser is going straight, you can actually turn the knob into any direction without penalty. This makes it much easier to play such staircase patterns like this, because you can simply consistently turn the knob into one direction to pass it. Another general tip is to increase your lane speed gradually. You might wonder why that can help. Doesn't it make it harder to react if the notes are coming at you faster? Well, the reason is simply that at low level lane speeds, your brain will be overwhelmed by the sheer amount of notes coming at you, and it will be very hard to read the dense patterns. Additionally, it gets easier to grasp the timing of notes if they are further spaced out. For example, are they a quarter note or an eighth note apart? I would recommend starting at a speed of 2 and then increasing this by 0.25 whenever you get comfortable at your current speed. Once you reach speed 5, you can start increasing it slower, for example at 0.1 increments, and probably in much longer intervals. One thing to note about the difficulty of charts is that it increases not linearly, but exponentially with the level. So you could say, for example, that a level 14 chart is about twice as hard as a level 12 chart. So the learning curve is quite steep, and you might make rapid progress in the lower levels, but hit some walls later. If you find yourself stuck at a difficulty level, the best tip is just to play as many different charts as possible of the hardest level that you can consistently clear. You will see more kinds of pattern and get used to them, which will help you moving up into the respective next level. Let's also talk briefly about the Skill Analyzer mode. Skill Analyzer allows you to challenge yourself with so-called Dan courses at different levels. For example, in a 5 Dan course, you will play songs from level 12 and 13. You need to pass all of the 3 songs in order to pass the course. If you pass a Dan course, you will also get a badge to show that off. Basically, your highest Dan badge is another way to measure your skill and progress in the game, similar to Voltex. One special thing about the Skill Analyzer mode is the clear gauge. It uses another kind of gauge which starts at 100%, and you will lose immediately if the gauge ever reaches 0. At the end of a song, your current gauge value will be carried over to the next song. So if you play a song badly, you will have only a low amount of life left on the next song, so be careful. Finally, let's talk about some of the unlock systems in the game. You will notice that you cannot play some of these songs initially and need to unlock them first. In the Konasute version, there's only one system called Blaster Gate. After playing a chart, your orange Blaster gauge will fill by 8%. So you need to play in total 13 songs until it is full. Once filled, you can switch to the special Blaster Gate folder in the menu and select the chart. If you clear the chart, you will unlock it, together with all lower difficulty charts of the same song, if there are any. If you fail to clear the chart, you need to fill your Blaster Gauge again to try again. In the arcade version, there are a few more unlock systems as well. The easiest one is that some songs are simply locked behind a currency called PCB that you earn simply by playing the game, so you can just buy them. There are also additional systems called Omega Dimension and Hexadiver, but I won't go into the details of them here, as I rarely play on the arcade version, and quite frankly I don't really know how they work. That is all for now. I hope you found the guide useful and have fun playing Sound Voltex.